I enjoyed being in Connecticut, and apart from the fact that I liked working with Barry, it was such a refreshing change from Los Angeles. Yeah, it was a lot more peaceful for a start, and I didn't have to deal with driving on congested freeways. The country life suited me, and it was lovely spending time with the dogs, Henry and Lily, and the Levinsons, of course. I'd always been treated like one of the family, for the most part anyway, and this time I joined them for meals cooked by their personal chef. I also had use of one of their cars, so life wasn't hard at all living on their beautiful estate. As usual, Barry dictated the script for Man of the Year to me, and I put it into script form. As mentioned, he was writing it with Robin Williams in mind, and the character was loosely based on Jon Stewart, the host of The Daily Show, a comedy and politically oriented TV program. I thought it was a very clever script, and naturally Barry's own political views were along the lines of those of the host of The Daily Show. We finished the script within 3 weeks, which was the norm, and I returned to LA. Sadly, I'd lost contact with Nathan. His mother's phone number was no longer in service, and I assumed they'd moved house. Also, since he was now in his teenage years, I understood that he had his own life. Little did I know, however, exactly where that life was taking him. Several months after our wonderful trip to San Francisco and the Levinson home, Nathan was arrested for taking a handgun to school. He spent several months in juvie, or juvenile jail, and I really didn't know anything about it until much later when he called and told me. He first apologized for not being in touch and said he'd been in trouble. I was naturally shocked when he told me about the gun incident. I just couldn't get my head around it. I asked him where he got the gun and why he took it to school. He said a friend had given it to him. It wasn't loaded, and I just wanted to show it to the other guys, Marie. Well, whether he was trying to gain bragging rights or just wanted to look like a tough guy, I don't know. The fact was, he now had a criminal record. I know you're disappointed in me, and I'm really sorry I've let you down. I really messed up, Marie. There wasn't much I could say to him, beyond the fact that he'd made a bad choice and had to suffer the consequences. But I told him I loved him and that I'd always be there for him. I asked for his mother's phone number, but he said he couldn't remember it. Well, how can I reach you? I asked. Oh, well, we're moving again, so I'll call you later and give you the new number. Well, the call never came, and more months went by without a word from Nathan. In desperation, and because I was worried, I managed to get hold of his 17-year-old cousin in Las Vegas, Eric, who said he'd get Nathan to call me. Well, the next day I did get a call from Nathan. He sounded great and said, I don't call you when I'm not doing good, Marie, because I don't want to worry you, but I'm okay now. He told me that he had a job stacking shelves at Walmart, but frankly, I just couldn't imagine him being happy doing that. He also told me that he was living with his younger brother, but he didn't mention his mother. When I asked more about it, he suddenly had to get off the phone. I gotta go, but don't forget I love you, and I really appreciate everything you've done for me in my life, Marie. That gave me a bit of a jolt. It sounded a bit final. Nathan, are you really okay? Yeah, of course I am, don't worry. I told him to call me any time, day or night. I'd always be there for him. Barry and Diana's daughter, Michelle, was getting married at the Levinson home, and Martha Stewart was the wedding organizer. Miss Stewart had pretty much become famous as a chef on TV, and then when she showed her skills in so many other areas of home living, she began writing books on these subjects, branding her name into a multimedia business. This included various magazines based on her Martha Stewart living theme, one of which focused on wedding planning. Martha lived in Westport, Connecticut, and moved in the same circles as Diana Levinson. So when her daughter was due to be married, it was only natural that Diana would reach out to the local expert. I must add that this was prior to Martha's incarceration, another element of her fame. As you can imagine, every detail of the wedding was first class. It was really beautiful. It was a traditional Jewish ceremony and was held outside in the magnificent Levinson garden. And every plant, every single tree and flower decoration had been placed and designed especially by Martha and her team. I sat next to the singer, Michael Bolton, and a very pretty young woman who I thought was probably a girlfriend. Well, I was wrong. It was his daughter. Michael was a very good golfer, and apparently had been teaching Barry to play. So I guess he qualified as a wedding guest. There was a huge marquee for the reception with a live band and, of course, a delicious meal, and every kind of food and fun stations for adults and kids, including popcorn, all kinds of candy, chocolate fountain, you name it, it was there. It was a lot of fun. I'd previously mentioned to Barry that I was thinking of moving to Connecticut, and he seemed a little concerned. "Well, I'm not sure I can guarantee work for you," he said. "I'm not coming here for you, Barry. I'm moving for me," I told him. "I like it here, and I need a change of scenery for a while." My lovely friend Angela threw me a going-away party, and I invited my friends who wished me all the best in my new adventure. I had the necessary garage or garden sale of stuff I just didn't need anymore, and my friend Stephanie and her 3 girls, Hannah, Brittany, and Olivia, helped. Then a week later, more friends came to help me load up a 25-foot U-Haul van with everything else from my Santa Monica apartment where I'd lived for 23 years. Then, with my cat Pumpkin on board and my friend Suzanne as co-driver, we were on the road from the West Coast to the East Coast. We were initially heading for Virginia, where Pumpkin and I would stay with Suzanne's friend Cheryl, while I looked for a place to live in Connecticut. I wanted a 3-bedroom cottage-style home and something that wouldn't exceed my budget, and I was confident that I'd be able to find the perfect place. And, of course, I did. In the meantime, we had a long journey ahead, as Suzanne and I took turns driving the van, which was packed from top to bottom with furniture. Pumpkin was in his carrier behind our seats, but he wasn't a happy kitty at all. He didn't know what was happening and was naturally very anxious. He cried and trembled. Oh, it broke my heart. And after an hour, since Suzanne was driving, I took Pumpkin out of the carrier and held him in my lap. Although it soothed him a bit, he was still very stressed. Suzanne and I had decided to take our time driving across the states and visit friends along the way. Our first stop was Palm Desert, where we had lunch with my English friends Anne and Fred. Pumpkin was able to stretch his little legs as he wandered around their lovely home and was much happier. Then 2 hours later, we were on our way to Phoenix to stay with Suzanne's sister, and Pumpkin was back in his carrier while I took the wheel. I must admit I was slightly nervous driving such a big, fully loaded vehicle, but I soon got the hang of it and actually found it quite easy. After a good night's sleep at Suzanne's sister's condo, our next stop was Texas. We'd driven a good 8 hours, taking it in turns, and with the help of our handy little travel guide, I'd called ahead and booked a room in a Best Western hotel just outside of El Paso, and, as it turns out, in the middle of nowhere. It was actually well named, since it was in an area that looked like something out of a Western movie. The hotel stood alone, and was almost hidden below a main freeway, surrounded by desert with the obligatory cactus and dry, crumbling trees and bushes starved of water. It was also eerily quiet, a high noon moment. Next time, Pumpkin goes missing and the Highway Patrol are on the lookout. Thanks for listening.